A century after Marx's death, the image of workers as the raw material for the industrial sausage machine may seem to many people a bit far-fetched. Marx would have been the first to see that in the journey from the 19th century to the present day, capitalism has changed profoundly. Some have even claimed that class divisions, and therefore class struggle, have ceased to exist. Of course, today's working class looks a great deal different from the 19th century sepia prints, as it hurries to the office or the factory of modern capitalism. It's no longer the top hat and the cloth cap that describes capitalism, nor even its modern equivalent, the bowler hat and the hard hat. Today's proletariat works in a range of industries that didn't exist a century ago. It includes more women workers, more black workers, more workers in the office and service sectors, more public employees, fewer in manufacturing. The modern working class is divided in all these different ways. And yet, it still sells its labor for wages, and its labor still produces profits, at least that's the intention. And people still experience, even with 3 million unemployed, the feeling that work is not the center of their creative lives.
Well, it's just a job really, you know.
You do your job, but I wouldn't say it was interest. You don't choose it as a career, it's just something that you take up.
Obviously I need the money, so it does play an important part, doesn't it, really?
You need money anyway, then you go to work.
You've got to come to work and earn some money to do what you want to do at home and enjoy yourself, haven't you?
Many people will recognize the sense of release at the end of the working day. Marx had written, "The worker only feels at home outside his work, and in his work he feels a stranger. He is at home when he is not working, and when he works he is not at home." Marx also pointed to the way workers become split off from the products of their labor, which stare back at them from the shelves of shops, stores and supermarkets as if they were alien objects. He wrote, "There is a definite social relation between men that assumes in their eyes the fantastic form of a relation between things. This I call the fetishism, which attaches itself to the products of labor so soon as they are produced as commodities." Marx anticipated the consumer society. In the language of consumption, objects take on a kind of magical significance of their own. We are the products of a new consciousness industry, buying not just goods but identities. Money becomes the universal language of human relations. Fundamentally, the capitalism that Marx wrote about a century ago remains intact. Capital still commands the forces of production. It harnesses and hires labor power. It secures the raw materials for production. It develops and implements new technologies. It reaches out to ever-expanding world markets, maximizing profits, knocking out competitors, centralizing on a world scale. The capitalism we face today links London, New York, Tokyo into a concentrated, integrated world system. Today, we live in a world of international banks, where finance capital coordinates the running of the international economy. The banks are interlinked with international corporations that employ an international workforce. They operate through international trade and transportation. They communicate through international data systems. Marx wrote, "The bourgeoisie has subjected the country to the rule of the towns. From the corporate headquarters in the great cities, they direct the modern world. They invest internationally, splitting up work between factories in different countries, linking the world through what Marx called a new and international division of labor, drawing in a new third world workforce at lower wages to yield higher profits, the most exploited sector of modern industrial capitalism. This third world workforce, fresh to the discipline of the factory, operates 20th century technology in return for wages and conditions which hark back to the 19th century.
The working condition here is very bad because we work 16 hours a day.
They are forcing us to have overtime all the day. We have 6 to 6, sometimes 6 to 8.
Yes, really, it's hard because they give us compulsory overtime. Sometimes they are collapsed, but nobody can go out because the door is locked, padlocked, and the window is closed. Nobody can go home to their place.
For third world workers, life under capitalism seems similar to the conditions described by Marx's collaborator Engels, when he wrote, "A horde of ragged women and children swarm about here, as filthy as the swine that thrive upon the garbage heaps and in the puddles." It's the usual catalogue of poverty, hunger, disease, poor sanitation, high infant mortality. A century after Marx's death, capitalism has certainly changed and yet not changed. It's still a system which Marx would recognize and in which we recognize him. But Marx also thought of capitalism as its own gravedigger. How did that idea stand the test of time? For Marx, capitalism bore within it the seeds of revolution. He expected this to begin in Europe, where capitalism was most advanced, and to become a world process as it progressed. The nearest he came to this in his own lifetime was with the uprising of the French workers against the state in 1871 and the formation of what has come to be known as the Paris Commune. The Commune began when French workers took the opportunity of a war between France and Germany to undertake the first proletarian revolution. Marx, who was commonly seen as an enemy of democracy, admired the Commune because it tried to set up a decentralized, federal system of direct democracy, where, as Engels put it, all officials, high or low, were paid only the wages received by other workers, and they were subject to election and recall at short notice. The communards had toppled the existing state machinery, which they saw as organizing society to serve the interests of capitalism. In place of the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, they installed what Marx and others called the dictatorship of the proletariat. For the communards, this dictatorship meant genuine popular power. They attempted to defend the common ownership and control of the productive forces, to build a society where, in Marx's words, the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. It was an experiment that couldn't be allowed to succeed. French and Prussian rulers joined forces to destroy the Commune. The forces of order besieged Paris to stamp out this short-lived experiment. Over 20,000 communards were killed. During the half-century between the Paris Commune and the end of the First World War, Marxist ideas became a powerful force throughout Europe. And just as the chaos of the Franco-Prussian War had helped bring about the Paris Commune, so the colossal slaughter and incompetence of the First World War helped to produce the right conditions for the overthrow of the Tsar Nicholas II. The Bolsheviks seized power in the first successful revolution, claiming inspiration from Marx's ideas. Under conditions of severe Tsarist repression, the Bolsheviks had forged a tightly disciplined, centralized, secretive revolutionary party which spread Marx's ideas throughout the Russian workers' movement. Their leader was Lenin, and like Marx himself, he argued that a Russian revolution would only survive if it was part of an international revolution. He claimed, "We are now in a besieged fortress waiting for the other detachments of the world socialist revolution to come to our relief." The conventional wisdom has it that this word revolution never materialized, and therefore Marx was wrong. But in fact, during the years following World War I, Marx's predictions came within a hair's breadth of succeeding. Even Britain, the center of European stability, was closer to revolution than at any time in this century. There were tanks on the streets of London, troops encircling Glasgow, where the red flag flew on the town hall. There were little Moscows in the Ronda, strikes on the railways and in the mines, dockers refusing to load arms for the war against Soviet Russia, coupled with the threat of a general strike. In northern Italy, in Milan and Turin, the scenario was much as Marx had predicted. The international proletarians occupied the factories and took control of production by setting up workers' councils. The factory council is the model for the proletarian state, claimed their leader Gramsci. They armed themselves to defend their gains. It was a challenge that was only contained by the army and by Mussolini's black shirts. Berlin under the red flag, announced the headlines in 1919. In the unrest following World War I, the Kaiser was deposed and a republic formed under the powerful German Social Democrat Party, who were strongly influenced by Marxism. In January 1919, the Spartacist League, forerunner of the German Communist Party, led uprisings throughout Germany which came close to the revolution Marx had expected. Many soldiers and workers had been disillusioned and radicalized by the war, and in Bremen, Leipzig, Bavaria and Hamburg, Soviet republics were set up. Spartacist leader Karl Liebknecht announced, "Whether or not we shall survive when all is achieved, our program will live. It will dominate the world of liberated peoples in spite of all." Because the German army was unreliable, this revolutionary crisis was only put down by a volunteer right-wing militia, the Free Corps, forerunner of Hitler's brown shirts. The Free Corps broke the back of the German workers' movement at the cost of thousands of lives. The leaders, among them Rosa Luxemburg, were murdered and dumped in the canals.